here, Geo, and I live over in Randolph, and it was great hearing those bagpipes because my old ancestors, and I know a lot of them in this county, come from good old Scotland. Mine come in 1856, so they escaped Scotland in 56 and come to the Blessed Valley. Anyway, I've been asked to tell a story that is about our county, and I chose one that is a little bit tragic. It's not real uplifting, but I think it has a good moral to it, and hopefully you'll be a little bit entertained. But I need a volunteer, and Wesley. All right, Wesley, I need you to sit right here. I need your mother, too. Okay, I'm going to start my story out by telling the ending first. It's a little bit unique. My story happened 114 years ago right here in Rich County. And Wesley is going to play the part of Patrick Coughlin. Have you ever heard of Patrick Coughlin? Anyone in this room heard of Patrick Coughlin? Anyway, Patrick Coughlin, on the day that we're going to reenact here, was 23 years old, and this is December 15th on a cold wintry morning, about 10 o'clock in the morning. And so, can you come up, Mom? And first off, I need you to blindfold him. Okay, Patrick Coughlin was an outlaw, basically, and he made a few mistakes and put himself in this situation. Could you pin that over his heart, please? Again, this is a true story. December 15th, 1896, which is the same year Utah became a statehood of Utah. So 114 years ago, Patrick Coughlin was sitting in a chair. He was getting a piece of paper pinned directly over his heart. He was blindfolded, and then he had his hands tied behind his back. We'll assume you can fake that for us. And about 30 yards away from him, directly in front of him, there was a canvas wall tent with 5 holes in the end of it, with rifles pointing out of it, with gunmen on the end of it. Okay? And this happened, I don't know how familiar, some of you are familiar with it, in the county between Randolph and Woodruff. There's that, we call it Mountain Fuel Man Camp. There's kind of those little subdivision between Randolph and Woodruff. Just south of there, a little bit, about a mile or so, and in a sagebrush flat, is where this happened. And so anyway, Patrick Coughlin ended up in the chair. 5 gunmen facing him. 4 of them had live rounds in their gun. 1 had a blank. None of them knew which one. They do that so they can sleep at night, thinking that they didn't shoot him. And the sheriff from Evanston was conducting this. Patrick Coughlin had spent the night, a couple of nights in jail in Randolph prior to his execution, and spent a little time with his mother, and his priest from Park City had just read him his last rites. And Patrick Coughlin requested, his final request was that no one took a picture of his body. And they didn't. So they held to his request. So the sheriff counted down. He started counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. And at that point, 4 bullets pierced through Patrick Coughlin's heart. He was dead. So Thank you, Patrick. We'll let you go. Appreciate it. You can keep the paper. I gotta have my hanky back. I used it on the way here, and I'll use it again on the way home. The amazing thing about this story, and I don't know if you noticed this, I brought this bowl of strawberries, because this is kind of how it all started out with Patrick Coughlin. A year or so prior to this execution, Patrick Coughlin was in Salt Lake. He kind of grew up around Salt Lake, and it was in Salt Lake on July 24th. Big celebration in Salt Lake. And anyway, he lifted a cup of strawberries off a merchant in Salt Lake, and the merchant turned him in. So the law went after him, and Patrick Coughlin went on the run. And he ended up hooking up with a couple of his buddies. Fred George was the other one, and another one by the last name of Bruce. And he convinced them they needed to leave, so they left and were headed up towards Park City. And the law in Park City, the sheriff, his name was Harrington. He kind of caught wind of it. He had dealt with Coughlin before, so he kind of went to head him off at the pass and ended up meeting them. They were on horses, and he was on horse, and he told them to stop. And they stopped all right, stopped and shot the saddle horn right off of Harrington's saddle. So now they were in a little bit more trouble, because it wasn't just a cup of strawberries. They were shooting at the law. So anyway, they took off again, left, and Bruce said, this Bruce, pretty smart dude, take note here. He says, I don't want any of this. And Coughlin and George says, all right. And they kicked him off his horse and took his gun and made him walk the rest of the way home. But at least he was walking a free man. George and Coughlin were still on the run. Ended up staying in a cabin in Rich County. This is where Rich County comes in, out where the Deseret Land and Livestock is now. If you're headed from Evanston down I-80, there's a place kind of called Wasatch, and in that area there was a cabin that they holed up in. The law found out about it in Evanston, and so they went to ambush to catch Coughlin and his accomplices. 5 o'clock in the morning, they told him, they hollered, give up. Instead of giving up, they made another mistake, started shooting, and ended up 2 lawmen dead. So 2 lawmen were dead on this, and there was 4 of them total. The other 2 took off before they got killed. So now we went from a cup of strawberries to shooting at lawmen, stealing a few horses in between. Now it was murder 2 times. So anyway, Pat Coughlin and Bruce, or George, holed up again in Salt Lake with some relatives. The law found out about them, surrounded them, and finally captured Pat Coughlin and Fred George. No, is that right? I got too many names in my head. Anyway, so they had him, captured him. Fred George ended up kind of plea bargaining a little bit as they spent time in jail. The jailers said that Fred George had some hope in him, and he did everything that they asked him to. Coughlin wouldn't, kept bragging about killing people and so forth. Coughlin ended up being sentenced to death. And it happened in Rich County because they had murdered the lawman in Rich County. And so, again, that fateful day, December 15th, 1894, Patrick Coughlin was led to his execution chair, and that was it. Now I brought the shovel along to finish my point. in Rich County, and hopefully everywhere else, we have a saying that what you should do when you find yourself in a hole. Anybody know? Who said that? Martin? What should you do?
Quit digging.
Quit digging. Exactly. Patrick Coughlin. Whoops. Mayor, where are you? I'm sorry. Patrick Coughlin just couldn't quit digging. So anyway, the moral to that story, especially kids, if you find yourself in trouble, stop. And adults too. And that's a great story of Rich County, and hope we all learn from it. Thank you very much.